Welcome back, everybody. College Football Payoff Podcast, Episode 8. And
Week 10.
Week 10, and going to start off with a college football payoff first. Big Country posted the first ever undefeated week in podcast history. Went 6-0, and it was impressive. Coming back, reviving his season.
Really exciting week last week. Was down on the season, still down on the season. That margin is really small now. Really excited about last week, 6-0, and covered a lot of these games pretty handedly too. Outside of SMU, Rice plus 1.5 won outright. Ohio State minus 12. Now they dropped to minus 10.5 pregame, but they ended up covering the 13. UCF won outright pretty handedly. Tulane won pretty handedly, and then Coastal Georgia State gave that out at under 65.5 on last Thursday or Friday. By the time it was game time, it already dropped to under 60.5, and it still hit.
Yeah.
Hey. I'm ready to build on it. I'm feeling great momentum right now. Trying to stay on the same process, same research process this week, and don't expect to duplicate it, but I think we're hot right now.
Yeah, you definitely are. I mean, my week wasn't the best, wasn't something that I wanted, but when my partner goes 6-0, it makes me feel a little bit better about what we're doing.
Winning solves everything.
Right. So last week I went 2-4, 27-23 overall, so I'm still plus. The wins last week were Boston College plus 31.5 over Clemson, and I actually, before that game started, I did throw just a little bit on the Boston College money line, just see if I got lucky. And they almost pulled that out.
Came really close.
Yeah.
I live bet the money line on BC, just sprinkled it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, hell of a game, and I think it'll tell us a lot about what we can expect this week with Clemson and Notre Dame.
True. And then the other win for me was Cincinnati, -7 over Memphis. That was pretty easy. Losses came with Minnesota -20 against Maryland. The over 82.5 for UCF Houston. Got a little ballsy on that one, and it came back and bit me in the ass, but that's all right. Oklahoma State -3.5 against Texas. That was a tough game, a tough overtime loss for Oklahoma State. Watched that entire game, and I watched the end of it going into the Ohio State game, and it was kind of a heartbreaker, but still a good football game. And then, oh man, the moneyline moneymaker lost for the second week in a row. Kansas State just let me down so badly against West Virginia. Moneyline moneymaker is now at 5-3. I do have a little surprise for you this week with that, but for now, I'm going to keep that under wraps, and then at the end of the show, you're going to have a nice, maybe a nice little winning surprise for this weekend.
I mean, the record on the moneyline moneymaker could also be negative, but still
True.
Profitable when it comes to units, just because of the value you've been helping us invest in.
There we go.
I'm still going to ride with the moneyline moneymaker going
Good.
forward.
As long as you don't give up on me, I'll keep giving them out for you. All right. Anything you want to talk about before we get into the games? I know the Clemson Notre Dame game this week is 1 versus 4, and without Trevor Lawrence,
it's more like 4 versus 20 without Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he's probably the most important football player on any team in the country right now.
Yeah, and the game last week, the first half, Clemson looked like a completely different team without Trevor Lawrence. But they seemed to get it together. I don't know what adjustments were made, but as much as I hate Notre Dame, I have a feeling that this week could see a little shake-up there with Notre Dame possibly beating Clemson because they are at home as well. So that's a big game. There's also another top 10 game with Florida-Georgia that I'm actually going to be talking about. It's one of my picks. And the return of Maction. As we're recording right now, we got Maction going on. So obviously we couldn't give out any picks for those games. But
it might be tough to zone in on the Maction games, considering our recording schedule. We usually record on Wednesday nights. The games are going Wednesday nights, so don't expect too many Maction picks from us this year.
But if we do have Maction picks, they will be.
We'll try to get to a week. Yeah, you can find our Maction picks on Twitter, usually on Wednesdays. and we'll give those out for free.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll tweet them out as we get them. Those games are always fun to watch, but obviously with them playing on Wednesdays, like Big Country said, it's going to be tough to give them out on the pod, so look for them through Twitter. All right. You ready to get into this or what?
Yeah, I got 6 picks for us this week.
Yeah, I do too, but I'm going to start. I know you're 6-0, and in golf, Birdie gets the tee box. We're not golfing. I want to go first because I have a Friday night game. I actually have 2, so this is the first of the 2 Friday night games. Miami, ranked 11 in the country, 10.5-point favorites at NC State. The over-under is set at 59. This is on 7:30 Friday night, ESPN. The ACC is quietly looking like somewhat of a powerhouse conference almost this year with Clemson, Notre Dame, and now the resurgence of the Miami Hurricanes. Not to mention the other teams in the conference like North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and even this NC State squad. They're putting up some decent conference and overall records, and the ACC is dishing out some pretty good football. This one is going to be a good Friday night appetizer for the weekend slate. Both teams coming off of bye weeks. Miami won their last game against Virginia, and NC State was demolished by North Carolina. So I think a big factor in this one is going to be Miami's opportunity to gain ground in the conference race with Clemson and Notre Dame facing off this weekend. Miami will not be able to afford another loss and still have their hopes of winning the conference. And the Hurricanes know that the last game against Virginia was a battle that they just barely won. They won that 19-14. So by having the bye week last week, you can expect the U to come out with a clean game plan and execute. And on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to need to polish up the run defense, which they gave up 185 on the ground to Virginia. They've only given up 5 rushing touchdowns on the year, though, and 150 a game. But you have to think that NC State will be relying on the run game in this one to help support their backup quarterback, who will be getting the start in this one. Bailey Hockman stepped in a few weeks ago when their starter, Devin Leary, broke his fibula against Duke. And he's completed 59% of passes for 531, but the glaring number is his touchdown to interception ratio. He's at a 3-4 clip, and he's also been sacked 7 times. Now, Miami's defense is nothing to call home about. They're still giving up around 22 points a game, but when you see a backup quarterback, you're ready to pounce and make the young guy make mistakes. So I think that's going to be a key in this game here. The defense for NC State, however, that's something that we probably don't want to talk about, and one that NC State fans are probably embarrassed about. They've given up 25 touchdowns on the year, and they're going to have to try and stop dual-threat quarterback Derek King. I mean, King has been playing pretty solid this year. He's fueling an offense when nothing seems to be going right. Against Virginia in that game, he was 21 of 30 for 322 and a touchdown, but it was his ability to limit the turnovers and use his arm and his legs to keep the offense out in the field, even when the drives were stalling. So I think he has an easier time in this one, sustaining the drives and putting up points. Especially he has his tight end, Brevin Jordan, back from injury, and that adds 18 catches and 3 touchdowns to the field. So Hockman will be playing from behind in this one, thanks to his defense giving up points, and it's going to force him to throw the ball. Could force him to make a lot of mistakes, and it's going to be a lot different than when he played North Carolina. I think Miami's a little more stout on defense. So just a couple trends here. Miami 6-2 against the spread versus teams with a winning record, 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 Friday games, while NC State is 2-8 against the spread versus teams with a winning record, and 3-10 against the spread in their last 13 as underdogs. I'm going with Miami minus 10.5 in this one.
Yeah, I like it. I think Derek King's got a chip on his shoulder still after that Clemson loss. He's out to prove something. So I definitely, if I'm taking this game, I got to lean Miami.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's get on to your first pick of the night.
I'm going to take it up to South Bend, Indiana. We're going to go we're going to check out this Clemson Notre Dame game that's supposed to be number 1 versus number 4. But we all know Trevor Lawrence, best player in the country, he's out due to COVID issues. I don't really understand it. Wasn't Nick Saban on the field 4 days later after testing positive?
Each conference has just the worst protocols. It should be the NCAA has the protocol set, not the conferences.
Right, but the NCAA just continues to prove that they are just nothing but a money collector.
Yep.
There's no leadership value. Anyways, back to the game. Freshman quarterback DJ Ugalele, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Ungalele.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, there's an N in there, I think.
Love it.
It's not spelled with an N, but there is an N in there.
So he's 42 for 60 this year on the field, 70% completion rate, 444 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. It does look good on paper, but I think the film tells a different story. He's not as good as the stats say. He got most of his playing time this year against Boston College in the Citadel. Struggled last week against Boston College, very evidently. Defense and Travis Etienne at running back really kept him in the game. And when they played Citadel earlier this year, he wasn't able to score a point against that team. I mean, that made me lose a lot of faith in him. It makes me think that Clemson is not nearly the same team they are without Trevor Lawrence. But one thing they do know this week is that there's going to be a hyper focus on their defense. Brett Venables knows that he's the one that has to step up and lead the defense to win this game for him. And so far this year, they have been doing really well. Their defense only allows 15.6 points per game. That's one of the best in the nation. And without Lawrence at quarterback, they're going to be on the ground a lot with Etienne. So if we look over to the other side of the ball, if you've heard us on this podcast over the last couple of weeks, you know our disdain for Notre Dame. We do still think they're the most overrated team in the country, and they underperform on all 3 sides of the ball. Ian Book, not been that great this year, only has 1,255 passing yards, and he's not going to be able to move the ball well against a high-caliber Clemson defense. This is definitely a step up in competition for Notre Dame, as they've just played the mediocre ACC schedule all year up to this point. But on the other side of the ball, Notre Dame's only allowed 10.3 points per game. So we can expect them to come into this game being able to stop a freshman quarterback who hasn't really been playing that well. But we can also expect Brett Venables to come and force Notre Dame to run the ball. I like the under 51.5 here.
Yeah.
So give me under 51.5, Clemson at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I don't think it's high scoring. No Trevor Lawrence. And, I'm glad you took the total in this game because the more I think about we know Notre Dame is they're an overrated team and we don't have faith in them, but
we know Clemson's just not the same team.
I mean, this game is pointing towards a Notre Dame cover and possibly a Notre Dame win, so the total is the play in this one.
Yeah, I can't back aside on this game.
No, absolutely. All right, good pick. All right, next one. I got another Friday game. BYU, the number 9 ranked BYU, is a 3-point favorite at number 21 Boise State. Over/under set at 60 points. This game is kicking off at 9:45 on Friday night, FS1. So my first Friday game is that Miami. In terms of, I call them the appetizer, right? So they're the chips and salsa you get when you sit down in a Mexican restaurant. This game?
No guac?
No, but this game is that side of queso that you order when you're trying to look at the main menu.
Better than guac.
Yeah, you want something to spice you up a bit. And this queso, it's top 10. So you can't go to the main menu without having it. BYU is that top 10 queso. They are a good team. They've been impressive, fun to watch all year long. 7-0, and they've beaten every team that they have played by an average of 30 points. Granted, they're not playing the highest caliber opponents, but they did have to go up against Houston on the road, and they took care of them by 17 points. So their offense has put up at least 400 yards each game this year. They're averaging 527 yards a game. And Zach Wilson, the quarterback, he's having a damn good season, completing 75% of passes for 2,100 yards and a 19-2 touchdown to interception ratio. He also has 7 touchdowns on the ground. Speaking of the ground game, running back Tyler Allgeier, is that right? Allgeier? Allgeier, okay. Contributed to the offense in a big way. He's got 587, 7 touchdowns. So the offense is very explosive. They are a legit offense. Defense isn't too bad either. 9th ranked defense in terms of yards allowed, which is at 281.4 a game, and 17th ranked in passing yards allowed, 183 a game. 11th ranked in rushing yards allowed, 98 a game, and 9th ranked in scoring at 13.4 a game. Their offense and their defense both match up to be, prove a top 10 team in the country. So this is going to be a big test for Boise State. It's just their 3rd game of the year. And the Broncos, they're not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they are 2-0, and they've put up 40-plus in both games. That was 42-13 against Utah State, and then 49-30 over Air Force.
Right, so they do have a talented quarterback transfer from USC, by the last name Sayers, who's replacing Buckheimer from last year. But I just don't know if the step up in competition is really going to do him too well.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was my very next point, was the quarterback change. So coming from 12-2 overall last year, their quarterback, he missed that Air Force game last week, and they never said why.
Very true, yeah.
So no one knows what's going on there. So you got the USC transfer who stepped up 17-20 for 280 and 4 total touchdowns with no interceptions in that game against Air Force. Now, Bachmeier threw for 1,800 last year with 9 touchdowns. Again, they did not give a reason why he missed the game, and he's listed as questionable for this game. So he could play, but you have to think that Sears is the starting quarterback. But having your as a team, as a player on that team, having your starting quarterback mysteriously miss a game, I'm sure they know why, but he misses the game, and then he's listed as questionable. Doesn't that play with your mind a little bit going into this one?
I can't back Boise State in this scenario.
Exactly. I'm not saying Jack Sears is a bad option. He'll do well at quarterback. It's just his second start against a top 10 team. It could be a rough spot. And Boise State has also allowed 233 yards through the air. So they're going up against a quarterback who likes to throw it. I'm not sure where the 3 points are coming from in this one. Kind of caught me by surprise, but I'm gladly going to take BYU. They're 8-3 against the spread in their last 11 versus Mountain West teams, 12-5 against the spread in the last 17 road games, 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 on the road in this series alone. Boise State is 1-4 against the spread in the last 5 against independent teams and 2-5 against the spread in their last 7 non-conference games. I'm going BYU -3.
Love it. All right. I'm going to take it back down to Austin, Texas. They're hosting my West Virginia Mountaineers this week, and I'm also going with my West Virginia Mountaineers plus 6.5.
I like it.
Now, it's no secret, West Virginia does play very well in Texas Stadium. We can remember, around 5 or 6 years ago when Geno Smith and Tavon Austin won the game against the biggest crowd ever hosted at UT. Well, we can remember 2 years ago where Will Greer connected with Greg Jennings in the final seconds, and then they went for 2 to beat Texas in their home field. This team thrives in this stadium, and I don't expect that to change this year. WVU's improved greatly over the last couple weeks. Now, their loss against Texas Tech had me questioning how they were progressing, but last week they really put those worries to rest with how bad they beat Kansas State. So Kansas State was ranked 16th. They got the best special teams unit in the country. West Virginia came out and smacked them. This was really impressive to me. This shows me Neil Brown's got this program on the right track. And Letty Brown is eating at running back, averaging over 100 yards a game and averaging over 1 touchdown a game. He's a really safe bet to slow the game down. Plus, they have freshman and sophomore wide receivers all over the field that Brown has recruited. And on top of that, after Texas's game against Oklahoma State last week, West Virginia does have the statistically best defense in the Big 12. They only allow 255 yards per game in the Big 12. That's unheard of. Now, granted, they haven't played Texas and Oklahoma yet, but this week will be the week that they put their defense to this test. Now, Texas, on the other hand, is in a major letdown spot. Coming off an overtime victory against Oklahoma State last week, this is the exact spot where teams lose focus. This is where they win big games and don't work as hard next week. They're definitely in that role. Their defense is still really bad, one of the worst in the nation. They allow over 400 yards per game. And Texas is just stuck in this hamster wheel of mediocrity. In a year where nobody from the Big 12 is really asserting their dominance, you can't expect any game to be given to you. I think Tom Herman might be on his way out of Texas. Sam Ehlinger is going to the draft next year. He may be already looking forward to that. With WVU's history in the stadium and Neil Brown showing that he's improved this team a great deal even from last year, I like WVU plus 6.5 at Texas.
Yep, and you hit it with Texas. Just they're not a team that jumps out at you. They're just mediocre.
Right.
And yeah, they win games. You know, they won that game last week in overtime. Big whoop. I mean, but you don't expect them to come out and blow people out of the water anymore.
And they just drop back into the zone defense.
Right.
They drop 8 guys. They're going to be a lot of space for Letty Brown to gain yards in the ground this week.
Yeah.
So,
all right, cool. So you're going your West Virginia Mountaineers. I'm going to go into that Oklahoma State, Kansas State game. 2 losers from my card last week are face off again this week. This is a first Saturday game, so it's 4 p.m. kick on Fox. Number 14, Oklahoma State, 12.5-point favorite against Kansas State. Over/under set at 46. Both teams, you know, they lost last week, but I only look at one team that I have to worry about in this one, and it's Kansas State, because they looked really bad last week. First of all, they decided to go against my moneyline moneymaker. That puts a very bad taste in my mouth. Offensively, though, the Wildcats, they had a lot of issues last week against West Virginia, and it does not get any easier this week against Oklahoma State. Their offense, Kansas State's offense, they had a lot of issues moving the ball. They've had a lot of issues moving the ball this year. They rank 83rd in total yards, 59th in passing, and 82nd in rushing. I mean, they have been able to put points on the board. You know, they averaged 31 a game, but last week they got 10 points against West Virginia while only having 225 yards of total offense. The running game was basically non-existent. Deuce Vaughn, which I'm high on, I like Deuce Vaughn, was held in check. As a team, they had 44 yards on the ground. Deuce Vaughn had 22 of them in a full game. That's like a quarter in some games, but in a full game, they only gained 44 yards on the ground. That's terrible. Skylar Thompson, the quarterback, he's out for the year for Kansas State, so Will Howard steps in, and he's had a tough season. It doesn't look like he's going to have a good game in this one, mainly because of the Cowboy defense. They only allow 174 yards through the air per game. That's 10th in the nation. They're also 29th against the run, 12th overall, and they've given up 17.8 points per game. Good enough for 14th in the nation. So for an offense that struggled against the Mountaineers last week, they're going to struggle even more this week against Oklahoma State. And, yeah, both teams are coming off of losses, but I think Oklahoma State's loss in overtime to Texas is a little bit easier to swallow on a gambling standpoint.
Yes.
That game was lost due to turnovers. Oklahoma State outplayed Texas basically in every part of the game but turnovers. They gave the ball away 4 times. They didn't have any takeaways. And that's what, it caused them to lose the game late and eventually lose in overtime. So seeing as the Cowboys' defense is solid and they're going up against an offense that can't function properly, this is a bounce back for Oklahoma State. This is a Chuba Hubbard game where he's going to rack up major yards, account for multiple touchdowns against the 60th ranked rushing defense in the nation. They give up about 160 per game, yeah. And last season, in this game, it was Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Hubbard had 296 yards and a touchdown. So I think he might get close to that again this year. You play well against certain teams. I think this is one of the teams he plays well against.
He'll be more motivated.
Yes, and Oklahoma State's 7-1 against the spread in their last 8, following a straight-up loss. Kansas State, they let me down last week, and I think I need to pick against them this week, not just because of that moneyline moneymaker flub, but because the defense at Oklahoma State is just too good for the Wildcats. So I'm actually going to do Oklahoma State minus 12.5. I'm also playing the over 46.5 in this one.
I like it. Yeah, I like the over 46.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma State. You know what? I'm actually going to just change it to straight up the over 46.5. So no spread in this one for me.
Okay.
I'm just going over 46.5.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, Spencer Sanders still had to knock some rust off last week, so
Yeah.
I expect him to be full force this week.
Mm-hmm. All right. So
Alrighty.
what do you got?
I want to take it down to Virginia Tech, but first I have a question. Who is Virginia Tech? They're a 4-2 team. They only have one convincing win, and that's against Boston College. They've lost to Wake Forest, who's not that good. They've lost to North Carolina, also apparently not that good. And they only beat Duke, who is also not that good, by 7. So I also know they have COVID problems all over their team. They've had fractured rosters the whole year. What do you expect that to change? They have less than 200 passing yards a game.
That's bad.
And they have over 290 rushing yards a game.
Okay,
They're not a triple option team.
Yeah, they don't have an identity.
And their defense gives up 460 yards a game. This team is unsolvable, and if they're going to lay 14.5 points, I'm going to automatically look to the other side. So who's on the other side? Liberty. Liberty plus 14.5. One thing we know about Liberty is they run it up. Auburn transfer quarterback, who is now starting there, his name is Malik Willis. He's got a 67.2% completion rating this year, 1,122 yards, 9 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. On top of that, he's got 500 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. They score 38 points per game. They run it up. They allow less than 300 yards per game. Liberty's also finally ranked. I don't know if this is the first time in school history, but when's the last time in our lifetime that Liberty's been ranked? Has Liberty even been a D1 school for that long?
No, I don't think so.
But it's because they have Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
Hugh Freeze, former Ole Miss quarterback or head coach before he got kicked out for all the strippers and everything. But besides that, man, he's looking to make a jump. If he can show that he can bring Liberty from the gutter to a ranked position and beat another Power 5 team like Virginia Tech, he already beat Syracuse this year. Why not give him a Power 5 job going into next year?
Yep.
He just has more to play for. It's that simple. If you're going to lay 14.5 points, or if you're going to get 14.5 points against a team that doesn't know who they are, I have to look at Liberty plus 14.5. Give me them, and let's roll with Malik Willis, guys.
Yeah, good. I mean, for me, it's going against Virginia Tech. Like you said, I don't know who they are. They don't have an identity of a team.
Exactly.
And
through 6 games.
It's pretty unheard of because usually I think Virginia Tech, I do think of a team that has,
Maybe
good
a dual
squad.
threat quarterback.
Some kind of a quarterback that can run.
Great special teams unit. Yeah.
But it's like, all right, what do you got this year? And nothing sticks out. So I like the pick. I like it. All right, let's go to some SEC action. Told you about this top 10 matchup. Florida, number 8, against Georgia, number 5. Georgia's a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under set at 52.5. 3:30 kick on CBS, and this game is being played in Jacksonville. So remember how I talked about first 2 games on my board were the appetizers. This is the filet mignon.
Oh, yeah.
This
rare?
This is the big game.
Okay.
Rare, yes.
I love this one.
Absolutely rare. Top 10 matchup, rivalry game. Winner is they're in the discussion for College Football Playoff. What more could you ask for in a football game on Saturday at 3:30? Oh yeah, and we do have bad boy coach Dan Mullen for Florida. He was fined $25,000 last week for the brawl. He came out pumping up the crowd after the brawl.
Hey, good for him.
During Missouri, that was pretty cool.
That's a piece of shit hit on Kyle Trask too.
It's dog shit.
That was ridiculous. Dan Mullen has every right to be pissed.
Yeah, he does. But then again, he's also the guy who tested positive for COVID just days after saying Florida should allow full capacity at their stadium.
Maybe not the biggest brain.
He's a loose cannon, but sometimes you need that as a coach. And yeah, he is in the top 10 matchup and this is the world's largest cocktail party. It's going to be a fun game, and it's right in the middle of a Saturday. I wouldn't want anything else. I don't think we will see the kind of fireworks we saw last week in the Missouri-Florida game, but it's still a rivalry game, so expect there to be some emotion there. When it comes to rivalry games, though, you want to find an edge on either side, wherever it can be. So I think the edge in this one, when I look at this game, is last week's brawl. Because of the fight, Florida is going to be without starting defensive lineman Zachary Carter and starting linebacker Antoine Powell for the first half of the game. Now, a half of football in a closely contested top 10 matchup game like this could make or break the entire outcome. Not to mention, Florida could also be without cornerback Marco Wilson and safety Sean Davis. They're listed as questionable with undisclosed issues. So not COVID or really injury. They don't know what it is.
I'm really just starting to think that maybe these undisclosed issues are COVID.
You know what? That's what I actually think too, because
not to get too conspiratorial, but why would you want to bring more attention to your program and team? Just
I think if you say it's undisclosed too, then you don't. It kind of says you don't have to shut down our facility or postpone our game or anything. You might be onto something there. But either way, that's 4 guys on defense that they're losing. A defense that already does have some holes. So miss some starters, just continues to add to the holes. Florida's 91st in the nation in passing yards per game. They give up 300 a game. 54th in the nation in points per game, giving up 29.3. But where Florida makes up for it is that solid offense. They rank 15th in the nation in yards per game. They gain 476. 342 of those come through the air. They're 7th in the nation in passing yards per game. So the offense can carry the team, but I think, those missing pieces on defense could be costly. And even though Florida does have, Kyle Trask and the nation's best tight end and Kyle Pitts, the game's going to come down to running because this game's being played in Jacksonville, and the forecast is showing rain starting from Thursday and staying steady all the way through game day. The Gators don't run the ball that well. The Georgia defense, however, is very strong. They allow 300 yards a game, which is 13th in the nation, 220 passing yards a game, that's 39th, but only 80 rushing yards a game, which is 4th in the nation. The rushing defense is what's going to hold the Florida offense in check, and Zamir White, the running back for Georgia, is going to continue to have a nice little solid season. He's got 400-plus yards on the ground, 6 touchdowns. He's averaging 6.3 a carry. Dan Mullen's going to have trouble in this one, especially in that first half with losing some starters and trying to navigate through that first half to try to keep it close. He's probably going to come out and say something after the game about how it should be played in a dome because neutral site. I don't know. He's a weird guy. But
he's an excuse maker.
Yeah, so those kind of point out at me, but also in the rivalry, the favorite is 5-0 against the spread in the last 5 meetings. Couple that with Florida being 1-6 against the spread in the last 7 neutral site games. I'm going Georgia minus 3.5 in this one.
It's the right side. I am going to take it down to Tampa.
Okay.
To a 1-5 team called the South Florida Bulls. This team is a disgrace this year. There's no explanation for how bad they are. 1-5, 0-4 in conference play. Their only victory this year is against the Citadel. Really impressive, right? So they're getting 17.5 points. I can't back them, though. This game is an over game. This is going to be an over 64.5 for Memphis and South Florida. Here's my reasons. Memphis is an offensive powerhouse. They gain over 500 yards a game, and you can expect them to run it up. They score over 33 points a game, and they've showed that they can score against great teams. They've put up 50 against UCF. They put up 27 against SMU. They pounded Arkansas State. This is a team that can score fast and score quick. But on the other side of the ball, they're the worst defense in the country. They give up 556 yards a game. That is atrocious. That is worst in the country, worst in Division I football. Some of the worst numbers I've seen through this big of a sample size of games. But if we look to the other side of the ball, what has South Florida done on offense? They only score 18 points a game this season. But if we look deeper than just the 18, we can see that they played good defenses like Tulsa, Cincy, and Notre Dame, where they only scored a combined 17 points in those 3 games. So when they play shitty defenses, they score points. Their quarterback, McLeod, his older brother's a wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He comes from an athletic family. He does have 757 yards, 4 touchdowns and 2 picks this year. So he's starting to gain his feet. But what I can expect from this game is points. When South Florida plays bad defenses, they score. They put up 37 against Temple. They put up 24 against Eastern Carolina. It's time for them to show that they actually have an offense against one of the worst defenses in the country. I can't see any scenario where this doesn't go over 64.5. I mean, nobody's going to play defense. Memphis is definitely not going to play defense.
Right.
USF can't stop a real offense.
Yeah.
I would have this game at like 72.
Well, that's what I think of is that Memphis UCF game, where that game was really high scoring, and it doesn't matter. If you play the worst defense in the country, you're going to score points.
Exactly.
You're not going to get shut out by that defense. So you expect points over there, and then Memphis is high-powered too. So I agree. It's going to hit over in this game. I can't pick a side. If I were to pick a side, I would pick probably Memphis just because I think they have a little more offensive firepower. But
I can't just lay 17.5
No.
on a team that doesn't play defense.
Right,
so
and that's too unpredictable. But the
over
total
64.5 is the play here.
Yep.
Lock me up.
Perfect. All right. So you went with your team, the West Virginia Mountaineers. How about we go with my team?
Uh-oh.
The number 3 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes at home against Rutgers. Ohio State's a 31.5 point favorite. Over-under set at 63. It's another night game for the Buckeyes. 7:30 kick on the Big Ten Network. Greg Schiano, he's returning to the Horseshoe to face his former school. He has the Scarlet Knights from Rutgers playing some really competitive football. When you think of Big Ten and Rutgers, you don't think they belong. But Schiano's trying to prove everyone wrong. He's trying to, instill this culture into his team. And he gets his teams to play with a lot of emotion. An example of that. Last week, I know everyone saw the crazy lateral play between, it was Rutgers against Indiana. Crazy lateral play. I think there was 8 laterals. Rutgers actually scored a touchdown. But after review, they saw, one of the laterals was a forward pass. This all happened with less than 2 minutes left in the game. If that score would have counted, Rutgers still would have been down by 10. But the thing that stuck out was the receiver. They showed the receiver on the sideline who threw the ball. That was counted as a forward pass. He was crying on the sideline because he thought it was his fault they didn't score. You see other Rutgers teams or teams that really don't.
They don't care like that.
They don't care.
No.
A guy, they're laughing. This guy was crying. His team was losing by 16 points.
Yeah.
And he was crying because he thought that play cost his team the game. I mean, that's culture change in progress.
Yeah, and Schiano's been there before, man. He's really familiar with that school.
Yes.
He's the one guy that can bring Rutgers from the gutter.
Right. Now, it's just too bad that after that, they have to go run into Justin Fields in Ohio State under the lights in the Horseshoe. It's going to be tough. Fields has been, you want to talk Heisman worthy, and this isn't just a homer perspective.
No, he's a legit pocket passer.
He has just under 600 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. He has more touchdowns than incompletions in 2 games this year.
That's elite.
He's thrown 6 incompletions. The receivers that he has are making just stupid catches. And every time the offense gets the ball, there is a threat of either a long touchdown pass or a long touchdown run. They're explosive. There's no doubt about it. Offense will have no problem in this one. They put up 45 a game, gaining over 500 yards of offense a game. Rutgers, they do have a decent secondary. but they still allow 32 points a game. And they've been banking on turnovers to be a key to victory. They're 1-1. So the game that they won against Michigan State, they were +4 in the turnover margin. In the game they lost last week to Indiana, they had no turnovers. Ohio State has 1 turnover on the year, no interceptions. So 31.5 points is a lot. And I've said it before, I'm going to be iffy on Ohio State spreads that are that high. I don't know if the Buckeyes keep their foot on the pedal late in the game, and it's already in hand. I've seen it with Ryan Day so far this year. Kind of seems like he might go into a little bit of a coast. And, his first year he would pedal to the metal, but now it's kind of like he's easing up a bit. I mean, he apologized for scoring a touchdown late with his second string in the first week.
I think the only team he apologized to for that action is probably Nebraska, just because of their contribution to bringing football back. But
I guess, but the fact that he said that, I mean, it still doesn't say that he's going to try to put up 50 points, win by 50. I think the total is the play in this one. You figure Ohio State scores 45, Rutgers would have to score 19 to hit the over. I mean, they score 30 a game, and Ohio State does give up around 21 a game because the secondary for the Buckeyes has looked a bit shaky. The linebackers they don't look fast enough to keep up with skill guys. But even if Rutgers cannot put up 19 to 21 points, I still see Justin Fields stepping in, cementing his top spot in the Heisman race, putting up a 50 burger or more. Maybe a late score or two from the second string Buckeyes or Rutgers against the twos for Ohio State, and the over is going to hit. So I'm taking over 63 in Ohio State Rutgers.
I like it. Yeah, I definitely think Rutgers is going to be able to put up at least enough points to help you out there.
Yeah, the Ohio State defense isn't as dominant as they have in the past 3 years.
Arnett and the whole
their secondary,
line of people.
Their secondary took a hit, and
yeah.
I mean the defensive line is still getting to the quarterback a lot.
Right, but they don't have a Chase Young, a Boza,
a guy
they don't
who's
have
making them throw into the
Right.
Quarterbacks are getting back there. They have time to get rid of it, and they're exploiting the defensive backs a bit. But offense is going to carry the Buckeyes.
Awesome. All right, well, I'm going to take it up to Annapolis, Maryland. We're going to go take a look at Tulsa playing Navy this weekend. Tulsa's laying 11.5 points, and I'm rocking with them. But this is more of a fade Navy play. So Navy hasn't played a real defense in the last month. So the last 4 games has been against SMU, no defense. Houston, no defense. East Carolina, I don't even know if they're a team. And Temple, no defense. So the last time they really played real defense was Air Force, and they got shut down 40-7. Tulsa is no stranger to the triple option. And on top of that, Navy's been throwing more lately. So they made a quarterback switch, and now they have Morris at quarterback. And since he switched in, he has been 31 for 58, 555 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. And now they're throwing for over 121 yards a game. This isn't going to last against Tulsa. Tulsa is great against teams to the air. Earlier this season, they held number 11 UCF to 26 points in an upset win at UCF. Tulsa's defense comes ready to play. They only allow 375 yards a game, while their offense gains 400 yards a game. And if we look on Navy's stat sheet, their differential between points per game and points allowed per game is 18 points. If I have Tulsa with a strong defense going into an already beaten, battered, and nothing to play for Navy team whose point differential is around 18 points already, I'll lay the 11.5. Zach Smith this year has been performing really well. Although he's digressed the last couple weeks, he still has 924 yards, 7 touchdowns. He does have 5 picks. A lot of those came against Eastern Carolina last week where they almost got upset. But I think they're able to shake that off. It was more of a look-ahead spot coming off of a major beatdown against South Florida. I expect Tulsa's defense to shut down this triple option and whatever throws, whatever air raid that or air attack that Navy tries to come up with. Give me the 11.5.
Yeah, Navy just.
Who are they this year? I mean,
exactly.
They just don't. And what hurt them even worse is their second string quarterback on the depth chart, once the day he knew he wasn't starting, he transferred out of Navy.
That's pretty shitty.
If he would have just stayed down, they would have been better off this year. But
yeah. All right. I like it. Okay, we're going to go to South Alabama at number 15, Coastal Carolina. Coastal is 18-point favorite, over-under set at 55.5. This game is kicking off at 8 o'clock on ESPNU on Saturday. Coastal Carolina has found their way onto my card, and it is thanks to Big Country. You're high on this team, and it's time for me to roll with them. Undefeated, coming off, a mediocre 51-point win on the road last week against Georgia State. I mean, they're running away with this conference. They're running away with the Sun Belt. They're looking to get into a big-time bowl game. I mean, they're 15th in the nation. They could very well play in a New Year's Six bowl, maybe. I mean, think about it. They're putting up a lot of points and turning a lot of heads.
Yes.
They've won each game by at least 14 points, and quarterback Grayson McCall just rolling. He threw 4 touchdowns last week. They're 11th in the nation in scoring. They put up 40.3 a game. 25th in the nation in rushing. That's 197.8 yards per game. They were up 34-0 at halftime last week. And head coach Jamie Chadwell basically, after that game, said his team played a perfect football game. Most coaches won't say that, but, I mean, they are playing complete football games. Confidence is just sky high with this team, and I'm sure that opposing coach Steve Campbell and the Jaguars of South Alabama are not looking forward to playing them. South Alabama coming off of a loss last week where they only scored 17 points, even though quarterback Desmond Trotter threw 2 touchdowns. The offense, they've been kind of lackadaisical, and they rank 72nd in scoring. They put up 25.2 a game, but Coastal is just a different beast this year. 5-1 against the spread on the season, and the trends are all pointing in a Coastal cover here. 4-0 against the spread in the last 4, 6-1 against the spread in their last 7, following a straight-up win of 20 points or more. 4-0 against the spread in their last 4, following a game where they allowed less than 20 points. Meanwhile, South Alabama just 2-6 against the spread in their last 8 road games against a team with a winning record. Coastal is by far the best team in this conference. South Alabama is mediocre at best. Coastal scoring around 15 more points per game than South Alabama and allowing 6 fewer points per game. This is going to be a blowout. Coastal will win by 3 touchdowns easily. Give me Coastal Carolina minus 18.
I like it. Yeah, they're hot right now. They got something to play for.
They're fun to watch. Really fun to watch.
I mean, their field helps too, being the teal
That's
color.
awesome,
so.
isn't it?
All right, I'm going to take my last pick down to Boca Raton.
Ooh.
The FAU Owls are hosting the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. And this is a game of one team finally finding their identity versus a team who has struggled all year long. So the FAU Owls, they're now coached by first-year coach Willie Taggart. Now, he failed at Florida State, but he is doing better at a smaller school, a school in the Conference USA, still in Florida, so he's able to hold, a dominant recruiting schedule, and he's also inheriting Lane Kiffin's old players. And over their first 3 games, they have showed major improvement in their offense. Now, they only have scored 18 points a game, but they have been improving every single week. So I'm ready for them to break out against a Western Kentucky Hilltoppers team that I don't think wants to be there this year. Through 7 games that the Hilltoppers have already played, they are only averaging a score of 16.6 points a game. That is atrocious, especially through 7 games. How do you not have it figured out yet? They are only averaging 275 yards of offense a game. I just can't back this team. Tyrell Pigrome has showed improvement, but he was the leading passer and rusher on that team until last week. Walker, Western Kentucky's new leading rusher, only has 274 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground through 7 games this year. This is a team that has struggled so bad offensively that their season is probably done. FAU, on the other hand, through 3 games, has only allowed 13.3 points a game, and over the last 2 weeks, they've only allowed 12 points combined. Like I said, this is finally a team that's getting on their feet, and their defense showed that they can stop a dual-threat quarterback last week against UTSA. I love the Owls at home -6.5 this week. Let me rock with Willie Taggart's new team.
Okay. Yeah. I like it. Willie Taggart. That's beautiful.
No notes.
That's beautiful. I love it, man. You know what you're talking about. And you're 6-0. I mean, you got to listen to the kid. He's coming off a perfect week. First time in college football payoff podcast history.
It's an honor, but I'm still below 500. So we're going to get back there.
It's coming
It's
back.
a marathon, not a sprint, and we're hot right now.
But you know what? I need my moneyline moneymaker to come back strong. All right? So this week, got something special for you. But let's first talk about last week. The week before. They were both just kicked to the knockers. Trusted. Kansas State Wildcats. I trusted them. They decided to just lay down and die in the country roads of West Virginia. That hurt. I need to find something this week to redeem myself and boost the confidence a bit. I looked at all the games. I found not one, not two, but 3 possible moneyline money makers for this week. So here's what we're going to do. We had the first 6-0 in podcast history. We're going to have the first unofficial, all right, I'm not saying to play it, but I'm saying it's there for you, unofficial moneyline moneymaker parlay of the week, as well as an official lock of the week. So let's start with that official lock. We're going to go Big Ten football. It's going to be the Michigan State Spartans in a noon kickoff against the winless Iowa Hawkeyes. Michigan State coming off the huge win against the quote-unquote big brother Michigan Wolverines. Some say this could be a letdown spot, but how can it be letdown when the winless team is favored by 6.5 points? That's almost as much as a kick in the nads as Kansas State was to me last week. Rocky Lombardi for the Spartans, 6 touchdowns, 642 yards so far this year. He's feeling good. While Spencer Petras of Iowa has 3 times as many interceptions as he does touchdowns. Michigan State's putting up 27 a game. The Hawkeyes are giving up 22.5 a game while only scoring 20. Load it up. Lock it in. Michigan State plus 215 is the moneyline moneymaker lock of the week. So now that we got that, let me give you 2 more that you can parlay. Illinois going up against Minnesota. Minnesota's looked awful. Illinois almost pulled out a win last week against the dark horse of the Big Ten in Purdue. That money line is at plus 220. The third game, Arkansas. That's right, Arkansas. Going against Tennessee in a home night game. Gorentano, liability. Tennessee, 3-game losing streak. Money line in that game is set at Arkansas plus 105. If you put these 3 together in a parlay, bet $10, you'd walk away with $196. Let's make some history just like Big Country did last week. We're going to go moneyline moneymaker lock, Michigan State at plus 215. Unofficial moneyline moneymaker parlay, Arkansas plus 105, Michigan State plus 215, Illinois plus 220. There it is.
What's that payout?
$10 get you $196.
Okay, I love it.
I mean,
I'll ride with it.
let's do it.
Let's go.
All right, man. That was good. Covered some good games
Yeah,
there.
we did.
I'm excited for this week's slate of games. We got action going on right now. We weren't able to get those out because we didn't know how to attack it. But like I said, we're going to be, if we have plays on those, we'll tweet them out to you. Obviously, it's tough to get them on the pod when they play on Wednesday nights, and that's when we record. But hey, Pac-12 is coming back too. I don't think either one of us had a Pac-12 game, right?
Not yet.
Yeah,
I'll stay as far away from them as possible.
Yeah, I want to stay away from Pac-12, but we're good. All right, you want to go over what you got first?
Yeah, Big Country's Week 10 college football slate. I got Clemson and Notre Dame under 51.5 for you. West Virginia plus 6.5. Liberty plus 14.5. Memphis and South Florida over 64.5. Tulsa minus 11.5 and FAU minus 6.5.
All right, and my card for Week 8 or Episode 8, we got Miami minus 10.5, BYU minus 3, the over 46.5 for Oklahoma State at Kansas State, Georgia minus 3.5 against Florida, The over 63 in Ohio State Rutgers. Coastal Carolina minus 18. And then the Moneyline Moneymaker lock of the week, Michigan State plus 215. And the unofficial parlay, Arkansas, Michigan State, Illinois, $10 to win, 196.
Love it.
All right. Hey, good episode.
Yeah.
That was
Hey,
fun.
if you guys are enjoying these episodes, the biggest thing you can do for us besides liking and subscribing is sharing it with your friends. If you got friends that gamble, send it over to them. If you like it, maybe we'll catch some new subscribers and likes. But the biggest thing you can do to help us is share, and we appreciate you guys who are watching us now.
Absolutely. And tell your friend if they're a little skeptical, say, hey, Big Country just went 6-0.
6-0, baby.
6-0. You could have won some extra money this weekend. Why aren't you listening? All right. Follow us on Twitter, Accountant Bets, CF Payoff Pod, and what's your handle?
At Big Country Bets.
All right. Follow us, share us, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you next week. You got anything else?
Happy betting.
All right. Happy betting.